does have to do with defamation. They weren't the one publishing the story. They were the ones, again, reacting to the story.
Talking about talking about laws. Brett has sued or has started the case in Mississippi. The slander case in Mississippi. And Mississippi has, of course, defamation laws. So let's take a look at that defamation laws, the defamation laws in Mississippi. RJ, can you
Yeah.
share some thoughts on this?
Yes, yes, yes. So just gonna read it real quick. Under Mississippi law, defamation, libel, and slander refer to communications that are intended to harm the business or reputation of the person who is targeted. For a court to find that a party has been defamed, the communication must be disclosed to another person without your knowledge or consent. In the simplest terms, libel and slander are two separate forms of defamation based on whether the false disparaging statements are verbal or printed. Libel is a false, malicious statement in photo, signs, writing, or other written material. Slander is essentially the same type of false, disparaging statement that is communicated to a third person verbally. You see a lot of criteria. um, so we can dissect it. The most important things, it needs to um, be intended to harm the business or reputation of the person who is targeted. So we have to see whether the criterion, the criterion intention comes into play. Intention doesn't always mean that you need to prove that they wanted to cause the person harm, but it can also mean that you are intention it's a different kind of it's like an implied intention. If you act so recklessly that you implicitly knew that there was a risk of someone's reputation getting damaged and you decided to do it anyway. The reason why it's that ample is very simple. It's very difficult to prove intention. Just like when you have a knife and you start waving it around and you harm someone by accident, you didn't mean to harm that person. But by swinging the knife around, you knew that there was a chance that the knife could reach somebody, and that could cause harm to that person, right? So that's the first important part, intention. Let's go back to the text to see what other important criteria there is to that, let's say, it's worth talking about. It says that the communication must be disclosed to another person without that person's knowledge or consent. Well, in this case, it was spread around in the person's knowledge or consent, right? However, I'll say this again. Both Shannon Sharpe and Pat McAfee are reporters. And their daily lives, they have to report on relevant news. Brett Favre is a legend as it pertains to football. And when something happens off the field, they would still discuss it because they do consider it sport related. Both Shannon Sharpe and Pat McAfee commented on something that was said, that was published in other sources, news articles. It wasn't, they weren't the ones telling the story. They were the ones reacting to the story. So it's not like they went on an interview just to talk about this. They talk about different things, and one of the topics they touched on was this. So that's why I said that news, or at least journalists, have more leniency as it pertains to what they can say, as it pertains to their opinions that they can express. And that's why the criteria I just read, you're not allowed to share it without the person's consent or knowledge. It's still a criteria, but you would take it with less seriousness because their job is to talk about things without people's consent, newsworthy information. And finally, this is not on the, so let's say the defamation, so this does have to do with defamation. They weren't the one publishing the story. They were the ones, again, reacting to the story.